In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Today is September 2nd, 2024. We are starting our stream, and today with us is the one and only Jay Smith. Um, Unfortunately, I cannot record the video right now, but I will do it later. For now, I guess I have to say who I am and what we do, since we have this stream in English, and I suppose many people will be watching us later on. So we have my channel is basically dedicated to apologetics and polemics with Muslims. We do our streams on a weekly basis and joined by hundreds of people from around the world. Thanks to the groundbreaking research that Jay Smith has done, we are able to challenge Muslims on many issues that they have never heard before. It certainly makes them angry and mad, and as a result, we get insulted, we get threatened, cursed. Many priests in Russia, as we are a Russian group, mostly we do the streams in Russian. Many Orthodox priests are killed, threatened. Most notable is Father Daniel. He was killed at a daylight in Moscow, in his church. About a month ago, another Russian priest was murdered in Dagestan and at daylight by Muslim terrorists. But we have other people, other priests, who are brave enough to challenge Muslims, and I just want to mention one of them at least, Father John, or as we call him, Отец Ioan. He learned Arabic, believe it or not. He learned Arabic, so he challenges Muslims. That's why he's so dangerous for them. That's why they hate him so much. And that's why they complained to, I guess, Russian eparchy so that they could stop him. And right now he's basically stopped his work. He's trying, but he has limits. But that's why we come here to challenge all Muslims to debate with us. Unfortunately, whenever they hear our arguments, they also get mad and they threaten us and they insult us. And that's the reason why we, most of us at least, do not show our faces, because we have families and children. But again, we do that despite everything. And today, again, we are joined with Jay Smith. So I guess I'll start with, and also there are also my friends here, Alex and Boris. So I'll start with a little personal question, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Most of us have seen your videos, have seen your lectures, and we pretty much know that you were born in India. Your parents were born there, and even, well, you said grandparents immigrated
Mhm.
from you. I don't know. That's what I wanted to ask. Where did they immigrated from? And you also mentioned you have Armenian roots. Is that true?
No, no. The last
No?
part's not. My grandfather and grandmother were in India back over 100 years ago. 1913 was when they first went there. My grandfather died in India, but my father was born there. And then when he was sent back, once his father died, back to America, we're from America, to California. He then, along with his new wife, my mother, both went in 1940s, right after the Second World War,
And in
to
this
India,
extreme,
and they were there for the rest of their lives. They tried to come back to America after they retired, but they didn't feel comfortable in America. They much preferred India, so they went re-immigrated back to India, and they both died there. Both their graves are there. That's where I was born, and I spent my first 17 years in India. We're
Hmm.
not Armenian. We're not Armenian. We're Armenian as far as our theological standpoint. That's probably what you're confusing. But certainly, having grown up in India, in northern India, where all the Muslims are, we have India now is the second largest Muslim country on
Yes.
earth, now surpassed Pakistan. So that's why I've grown up with Muslims. I have no fear of Islam, and probably why the Lord prepared me for the type of work I'm doing now.
Yes. Okay. The reason why I asked about Armenia is not just a personal interest, but several times on your lectures, you have mentioned this hadith, and I'm going to try to show this on the screen. The hadith is Bukhari, and it does mention Armenia and Azerbaijan. Do you recall that? When Uthman ordered to burn all Quranic manuscripts. Now, in your lectures, you always talk about Azerbaijanis. Um, Now, Alex is from Azerbaijan, and I was there too. So we have never heard this country in the 7th century in history.
Mhm.
Azerbaijan was created in the 20th century by Joseph Stalin. Prior to that, no historian ever mentioned this country. There was a region in the northern Iran called Azerbaijan. It's spelled a little bit differently, but again, this is probably 15th or 16th century. In the 7th century, there was no mention of Azerbaijan by any historian. So to me, this hadith is pure fabrication, later, much later fabrication, to justify the absence of original Quranic manuscripts, original manuscripts. What do you think about that? Do you know that
First time I'm first time I'm ever hearing this.
really?
Excellent. And Boris, I mean, Alan, that's an excellent point you're making because that suggests all the more reason that much of what we're looking at is written during the Ottoman period, much, much later, redacted back to the 7th century.
Absolutely, because I was shocked when I saw this hadith. In fact, I did show this to my Arab friend, and he was reading it in Arabic, and he confirmed it does say that. And he was a Muslim, and I asked him, how is it possible? Azerbaijan, there were no Turks. It was Byzantine Empire. There were
Yeah.
Armenia, there was Georgia, where in the territory of Azerbaijan there was another country. I mean, a state, I guess. It was called Caucasian Albania. Those people have nothing to do with Turks. Azeris are Turkish people. Well, the Turks appeared in Asia Minor only in the 12th, 11th, or 12th century. So
Okay,
again,
Alan, I'm going to
yeah,
ask you to do something for me.
yeah.
Since you have discovered this, I want you to write this up.
What do you mean?
Write it up in English first, and then you can translate it into Russian as well, and then send it to me because this is just another. We talk about the nails in the coffin of the
Yes,
standard Islamic narrative, SIN. Here is another nail, and you've just come up with it the first time I'm hearing it. But we need many examples like this because this is typical of what we're finding. Tomorrow, I am doing a recording with Hatun Tash, my colleague who is in
she should
Britain.
know about it, by the way. Yes, she's from
Doesn't know
Turkey.
this. She has
She
never
does
heard
not?
this.
Well, she
I'll tell
knows
her
her.
tomorrow.
She knows her country is a new country, never existed in history.
Okay. And you can
Yeah,
see there's two ways to look at this.
yeah,
It could be that those who are writing it now in the 21st century are putting Azerbaijan because that's the location. And so they're trying to make it. I do this all the time. Whenever
yes,
I talk about Syria and I talk about Jordan and I talk about Iraq, but I always put today's Syria, today's Jordan, today's Iraq, so people know what part of the map I'm talking
great.
about.
Yes, yes, I
I
noticed
do
that.
that,
Yeah,
and people have accused me saying there was no Syria, there was no Jordan. No, I know that, and that's only in the last hundred since the 1960s that we've named those countries those names. But
yeah,
that's for people can see that. So that could be what's going on here. I don't know. But what
right.
you need to do is write this up and let's run that back and let's see
Yeah,
if
but I was trying to find Azerbaijan on ancient maps. I did found a region in a northern Iran, but again, that has nothing to do with Azerbaijan. I mean, you cannot say Azerbaijani people. This is not ethnicity. It's almost like saying if somebody from a certain region in the United States, you would not call them by that state, by like somebody from I mean, you could say a New Yorker, but that's not an ethnicity. This is just a location. So in Hadith, it says, what is it? Waging war to conquer Armenia and Azerbaijan as a separate independent country. So this is pure lie. Armenia is known to be an ancient country. Yeah, there's a even Armenian quarter in Jerusalem, and there have been many Byzantine emperors who were Armenians. So no problem there. But Azerbaijan is a Turkish. I mean, it's a Turkic people. And again, it was
Hmm.
created by Stalin in 1920s, something like that. Anyway, so okay, that's that. My
Now, will you write this up for me?
I will try. Yes, sure. No problem. Also, another Armenian person, which Muslims often refer to, Sebios. You've heard this name.
Say it again.
Sebios. Sebeos, you call him.
Oh, Sabaeus, yes.
Sebeos. Okay.
Sebeos.
Yeah. So
Sabaeus.
Armenian historian, and
Hmm.
Muslims often refer to him as the one who mentioned Mahmed. Yeah, but they have no idea what he said. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What exactly did he say about Mahmed? Is it really Muhammad or it's a somebody else?
All right. This is the $1 million question, and this is where we have completely got confused because we have assumed anytime that anybody, and this is right about 660, so you're talking about 30 years, if there was a Muhammad, this is 30 years after he died, you have this bishop from Sabaeus who is writing about Muhammad, and he writes it with a T, not with a D.
Hmm.
But how is it that he that becomes Muhammad? Because by definition, to have the word Muhammad, you have to have a D, and also you have to have three vowels, right?
Hmm.
There were no three vowels in the 7th century. Vowels didn't exist. They weren't introduced until the 8th and 9th century. So why are we imposing Muhammad of today, today's Muhammad, with Mim Ha Mim Dal? Why are we
Yes.
putting a the Dhamma and Fatan Fatah? Those were never there. So obviously it's Mahmud. Now, who is Mahmud? Well, he's all over the 7th century. That is the praised one. It's a title.
Was that a
It's a
common
title.
name?
It was a common title used. Listen, it's all through our
Title or a
Bible.
name?
It's a title. It's not a name.
Okay.
There's the problem. See, this is our confusion. We have put Muhammad there as a name, thinking that must be Muhammad he's talking about. No,
Hmm.
it's a title of, many times, it's a title of an exilarch. An
Hmm.
exilarch are your Jewish, those who are responsible for the seminaries in what was then Hira. Today it's called Kufa, which is just south of Baghdad in what today is Iraq. That was where the Jewish seminaries were. And anybody who was an exilarch responsible, especially in the 7th century, there were five of them,
Hmm.
would put Mahmud before their name. So Mahmud ben Uziel, Mahmud
Interesting.
bin Salman. Mahmud was always the praised one, the anointed one, the Messiah.
Right.
The anointed one is the Messiah, right? They claimed to be the Messiah in the 7th century because they're still waiting today for the Messiah. And every time they died, the next exarch who came to power, he would then take that title. It was not a name, it was always a title. Now, not just the Jews did this, so did the Christians.
Hmm.
The person who really started this was Saint Ambrose in the 4th century. In the 4th century, Saint Ambrose saw what the Jews were doing with the word Mahmud because it's 11 times in the Old Testament. It's the same letters, four letters in Hebrew that you have in Aramaic, and also in Syriac. They use the same consonants. And so way back, if you look at Song of Solomon 5:16, where Solomon is referring to altogether lovely, Mahmud, the same four letters, MHMD in Hebrew. I'm doing it in English.
Hmm.
Mim Ha Mim Dal in Arabic. So when you see that this has been going on since 1000 BC, then St. Ambrose in the 4th century AD, he said, well, the anointed one is the Messiah. Who do you think the Messiah is? It's Jesus Christ. So he started imposing and saying, and he started putting this title onto the person of Jesus Christ. That was in the 4th century. So by the 7th century, the Christians who were there in what is today, notice I'm saying what is today Syria, which would have been where Damascus is, those in Damascus, including Muawiyah. Muawiyah was the first caliph of the Umayyad Caliphate. He's there in Damascus. He was a Christian. If you have any doubt, look at the coins. Just look at the coins.
You
Every
said
one of the
you said
coins,
you bought the coins. Is that true?
I've got them. I got them right here in my drawer. I can show them to you, but it'd be kind of small. But if you look at the coins, he has a cross above his head. He's holding a cross in this hand. He's holding a spear,
Exactly.
cross in this hand.
But
On the back side of the coin
there's
is
an M.
another letter
Letter
M with
M.
it.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Why are they using Latin letters? If Arabs, make these coins, why are they using Latin letters, not
In
Arabic?
order to, in order to be able in order to be able to use it with Latin speaking people, that's why. But hold on a minute. Look at the bottom of the M. What do you see at the bottom of the
Yeah,
M?
yeah. Muhammad.
Mim dal in Arabic.
Yes.
So there's the Arabic. There's the Mim Ha Mim Dal. That's the first time we see it, and that was minted in 663. So this is the same time that Sabaeus is using that word. So why are we surprised that Sabaeus is also referring to the same Muhammad, the Muhammad who is Jesus Christ?
And
So you
also,
see, the Muhammad of the 7th century was either Jesus Christ or he is the Messiah that's yet to come for the Jews. And then, of course, they took that title for themselves. It's nothing more than a title. It's a title which means the praised one, the anointed one, the Messiah, altogether lovely. All of these meanings were on it, and we can see how that has transitioned and that has evolved since 1000 BC all the way up until the 7th century
mhm.
AD.
And to prove your point, if you read exactly what he said, there is no mention of Islam, there is no mention of Quran, there is no mention of Muslims. So why would anyone think this is Muhammad, Islamic prophet of Allah? So and again, if you read what he said,
Everybody has to find Muhammad. That's why.
yeah,
You
yeah,
have to
yeah,
find Muhammad in the 7th century. So when you see Mimha Mimdal, you impose on it. And listen, it's not just the Muslims who are doing it. Our good friend Robert Hoyland did the same mistake. Robert Hoyland, which is the classic book on those who saw Islam, those who were talking about Islam from outside of Islam, he did an entire book on this in
right,
1996. I've got it right back there.
right.
Looking at Islam from here, let me just get it for you so I quote it correctly. Um,
Can you get the coins as well?
points.
If you can.
Islam as others saw it. So here it is right here. Seem Islam as others saw it. This is the classic book. And
Hmm.
he refers to Sabaeus, he refers to Doctrina Jacobi, he
Hmm.
refers also to John of Damascus, he refers to John Niku. All of these writers, they're writing Mimha Mimdal. And Robert Hoyland, puts Muhammad there.
Hmm.
That to me is a gross, gross mistake. You don't do that as a linguist, and you certainly don't do that as a historian. You keep the letters as they are. Who is he to impose Adama, Fatah, and Fatah when there was those vowels didn't exist? So he's
Right.
taking his viewpoint from the 7th century. He's a scholar at Oxford University, and he's putting these vowels on when he had no right to do that. He should have just left it as it was written.
Right.
That's why if you look at the coins, there's no vowels on it. Let's go one step further. What about the Shahada? Where does the Shahada comes from? It comes from the Dome of the Rock. The
Right.
first time you see the Shahada in its complete form, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, there it is, but it's Muhammad. It's not Muhammadu. Remember, where did we get this idea that
So,
Muhammad is Muhammadu on the Dome of the Rock? Look at the Dome of the Rock. Look at the inscriptions. There's no vowels on any of those inscriptions, written
mhm.
in 691, the late 7th century. On the coins that Abdul Malik mints, he has the Shahada on the outside in Arabic. There is no Dama or Fatah. So we're imposing that on those coins. And the Shahada really is an attack against Jesus Christ because look at the inscriptions that precede it. Say not three, for God is one and he has no son. There's three attacks against Jesus, his divinity, and the Trinity right there in that one verse, which later becomes chapter 4, verse 171 in the Quran. But also, once you say, for God does not begetteth, nor is he begotten, that's also on the Dome of the Rock. That goes into chapter 112 today in the Quran. But then what does it follow with? La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is only one God but God. You're attacking the Trinity, you're attacking the sonship, you're attacking his divinity, who? Jesus' divinity. And he said, and then you, as an anti-Trinitarian, this is an anti-Trinitarian, and say there is only one God but God. And the Muhammad they're all waiting for, the Muhammad who is the praised one, who is the anointed one, who is the Messiah, is nothing more than the messenger. Bingo.
Exactly.
This is an anti-Trinitarian attack against the Trinity. And the
Exactly.
Trinitarians, who do you think the Trinitarians are? They're the Byzantines. And who's writing it? He is a Umayyad caliph. He is a Ishmaelite. from the line of Ishmael. That's
Mhm.
why he's attacking the Trinitarians. So, listen, why are we surprised that he was an anti-Trinitarian? There have been anti-Trinitarians since the fourth century. Who do you think Arian was? Why do you
Yes,
think you had the Council of Nicaea? What was Athanasius arguing about? He was arguing against the anti-Trinitarians. So this has been going on in the church since the fourth, fifth, sixth, up. We're now in the seventh century, and it's still going on today. Who do you think the Jehovah's Witnesses are?
exactly.
They're Trinitarians. They're Arians. So no wonder this was happening. Here's the problem, though. This is the problem, Alan. In the past, whenever anti-Trinitarians have raised their heads, they've always been a minority. They've had no position of power. Arian was nothing more than a bishop. Now, Abdul Malik, he's a caliph. He's not just a bishop. He controls from Spain in the west all the way to India in the east, from Turkey in the north all the way down to Yemen in the south. He has
Hmm.
the second largest superpower of his day. Now,
Hmm.
when he says that there is, say not three, for there is only one, and the God is not begotten nor is he begotten, and there is only one God but God. When he says this, and Muhammad, who you're waiting for, the Messiah you're waiting for, is a messenger of God. He is not God. When he says it, it sticks. And when he puts it on all the coins, it is there. It is replete. But he's not a Muslim. There's nothing Islamic about what he's saying. This is an internecine Christian clash between Byzantine Trinitarians and Ishmaelite anti-Trinitarians. No wonder then why Islam, which then was birthed out of that during the Abbasid period from 740 on, they are the ones that created Islam that we have today, and they took that anti-Trinitarian idea and they made it part of their doctrine, part of their whole whoop and woof. And that's why still today, the first question we get asked by every Muslim is how can Jesus be God? How can God enter time and space? How can 1 + 1 + 1 equal 1? So
Yes, same
aren't we
story.
surprised that that's still at the forefront
This is
of
the
all of
most
our faith?
favorite question by Muslims. They always ask us the same question over and over and over. And no
Been
matter
going
how
on
many
for
times we
1,300
respond,
years.
no matter how many times we answer them, they're still asking the same question. Now, from the story you just told me, I have several questions. First of all, Quran, besides Muhammad, it mentions Ahmed. If there are no vowels, how could you read that as Ahmed?
You're imposing into it.
So it does
Now
not
be
say
careful. Be careful. Ahmed starts with an aleph.
exactly.
So aleph by definition is a vowel. It is the vowel, but there is a problem right there. But is Ahmed the same as Muhammad? That's the big problem is that we're imposing. And that's why now you can understand why the word Muhammad, MHMD, is only found 4 times in the Quran.
Yeah.
Now you can understand why, because this is referring to the Messiah, who is Jesus Christ, who is found 93 times in the Quran. His
Hmm.
title is Muhammad. That's why it's not that important. It's not that important in the Quran, but it is absolutely important for Muslims today. And they're the ones that are putting those four applications onto those four verses.
Right.
Can you see?
Um,
Just go back and put it back in the seventh century where it belongs. Stick that word back there. Look and see what's happening with Arabic and realize they only had 16 letters in the Arabic alphabet back in the seventh century. Only 16 letters. Today we have 28. Where did the other 12 come from? Well, they came from the dots and the vowels that were invented in the 8th and 9th century so that you can delineate between which of these letters, these 16 letters, you can get the different pronunciations. But that
yeah.
did not exist in the 7th century, not at all. And these are all 7th century references you're giving me.
Right. You mentioned Robert Hoyland. Now, I've been asked by Muslims just a couple days ago when I presented these arguments to them. Again, they got really mad, insulted us, insulted my mother, my children. Cussing was like a normal language for them. Anyway, so we talked about the first Muslim who entered Jerusalem, and they said it was Umar, because we spoke about Al-Aqsa Mosque. And supposedly Muhammad flew there on a winged horse. Obvious question is how can he fly to Al-Aqsa when there was no Al-Aqsa at that time? And they confirmed actually that the mosque was built by Umar, supposedly. But in fact, we know that it was
This is a
Abdul
huge
Malik.
confusion.
Yeah.
This is huge confusion.
So what?
No, it wasn't even by it was built in 710, so that's by Walid, the son of Abdul Malik,
Right.
Al-Aqsa. So it's
So
710, it's 8th century. So
so
even more, even later.
okay, I remember your interview with Robert Spencer, and you asked him about first four caliphs in the Rashidun period.
Right.
He actually said there is no historical proof
Now,
for their existence as well,
listen,
right?
we have nothing for Abu Bakr. We do know that Abu means father of the Bakr. Who do you
Yeah.
think the Bakrs are? They are the Lakhmids, who are what is today in Tikrit in Mosul. That is northern Iraq. So
Hmm.
that's over 1,200 miles too far to the north. So they're not anywhere Mecca and Medina. They're not in the Hijaz.
Hmm.
That's the first one. Umar, there are many Umars. Umar is such a common name. So of course there's an Umar in the 7th century, but look and ask what it is who he was. He is from Hira. He's coming east. He's coming from the east. He's coming to the west. He goes over to Jerusalem, and he is in 638. He then takes over Jerusalem, and Sophronius, who is the bishop there, asks him to come down and to pray
That's what
in
I
the.
wanted to ask you. How could Sophronius met Umar if Umar
Yeah.
never existed? And Robert Hoyland
So
mentioned that.
hold on a minute. We
Yeah.
can't say he never existed, but he was a Jew. Remember, he was always a Jew. That's why he refused to go in the Church of the Sepulchre.
Umar was a Jew.
Was a Jew from Hira, which is today Kufa in Iraq. What
Is
is
that
at that time was the
is
Persian area, which is Ctesiphon, was just north of it.
this is according to Muslim traditions? He was a
This is
Jew?
according to Persian history.
Persian history.
Yeah, remember, this is Persia. What is
So
today Iran in Iraq used to be Persia.
Sophronius did meet Umar.
Well, this is again, no one. You're asking things that I can't prove because no one's really studied this. You need to study this. We can only know what we know of today. In September of 2024, no one has really asked this question yet,
Hmm.
and we need to do an awful lot more digging. What we do know, and this is what we can say as of September 2024,
Hmm.
that we do know that somebody came from Hira. We think his name was Umar. We don't know if that's been attributed later on. Nonetheless, he was a Jewish king to come back to Jerusalem because he wanted to receive the Messiah. So Sophronius, who invites him to come to the church of the Sepulchre, he says, "No, I don't want to desecrate it." And what does he do? He goes up to Mount Moriah, which is where the temple stood, and he builds a structure there to invite the Messiah to return. But he doesn't live in Jerusalem. And then he leaves and goes back home again. That's all we know. What we do know, some references say, is that he then converted to Christianity about 6 years later, about 644, and
Who
then
you
died right after that.
you're talking
That's all
about?
we know so far.
You're talking about Sophronius?
No, Umar.
Umar converted to Christianity.
That's what we know. In 644, he converted to Christianity. But we cannot say for sure if that is historically accurate. So therefore, we can only go on what we know today. That's why I'm not going to take a position on that, a strong position. What we
Hmm.
do know is that Umar did not come from the Hijaz, okay? He did not come from Medina. That's what's important.
Interesting, because there's another problem with him when Muhammad, when Umar heard somebody reciting Quran, he got mad because he came to that person and said, "Who taught you to read like that?" And he said, "Muhammad." And then Umar said, "Well, Muhammad taught me the other way to read the same verse." And
Careful, you're quoting now traditions.
yes, they both came to Muhammad, and Muhammad said, you can read whichever way you prefer.
And
But the
which tradition
problem,
are you quoting right now? What tradition are you quoting specifically?
Bukhari probably, yeah, yeah,
Al-Bukhari. When did Bukhari write that?
exactly. Nobody knows, and they're saying he wrote
Yes, we
that.
do. We do know.
Well, we don't have a book of Bukhari. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so when's the first volume of Bukhari? When does it appear?
300 years after the death of Bukhari.
1200. That's the 13th.
Exactly. So who wrote it? We don't know. But they
That's just
claim.
one volume.
But
The
there's
other
a
eight
huge
were
problem with that.
introduced
You
in the
see,
16th century.
there's
So
yeah. Go ahead.
no, the other 8 are introduced in the 16th century. This is during the Ottoman period. So almost everything you're going to tell me about what Bukhari is saying is more than likely an Ottoman invention, possibly an Abbasid, but certainly from the late Abbasid period, the early Ottoman period.
Yeah. But I was going to say the problem with Umar. Well, you said he's not from Arabia, so now it's a little different. But I thought that he was from Arabia and he
Nope.
spoke the same dialect as all the Arabs because their argument was Muhammad taught them to read Quran in different dialects. And I
Oh,
was
there are many other
wondering,
dialects.
I
But
was wondering if
but
they
Alan,
speak the
back up
same.
on that. Back up
Okay.
on that statement you just said. Back
Hmm.
up.
Okay.
You can say, certainly, you can say orally dialectical differences, but how would you write it?
Exactly, exactly. So because Uthman ordered to burn Quran specifically for this reason, because there were different
Dialectical differences.
manuscripts written supposedly in different dialects. But again,
But right there,
how is that
you've just
possible?
shut that down, haven't you?
Say it again.
You've just shut that down because of the comment you just made 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, how could you write, as you said that, but I agree, completely agree. How could you write in Arabic without having vowels in different dialects?
So,
True,
see,
true.
we've been saying this, Alan. I've been saying this for 10 years. This is something that's not new. I've been saying even that story of of Udaifa up in Azerbaijan. And when he hears the oration of the Quran in the mosque after the battle, and he
Hmm.
hears from different ways, and they come to blows, and then that makes sense because you do have dialectical differences in Arabic. I have no doubt about that. You do in English today, in every
Hmm.
language, dialectical difference. And he comes back down to Medina, and according to Al-Bukhari, there in volume 6, hadith number 510. This is 510. He
Hmm.
says to Umar, who is the caliph at that time, what are we going to do when you're going to, I'm sorry, Uthman at that time. This is Uthman. This is 652 now.
Hmm.
What are we going to do when I hear different Qurans that are being recited? We must make sure there's only one Quran. So therefore, let's write it in the Qurayshi
Yes,
dialect.
yes, but the
How
problem
could
is
you have a
Muhammad
Qurayshi
said,
dialect without any vowels?
but Muhammad said, read it as you want. Read it as it easier for you. I don't exactly remember how he said it, but you can read it in 7 different dialects. Why all of a sudden that became a problem? Why Uthman all of a sudden decided that no, we're not going to read in different dialects. We're going to read it in only one. So we have to burn all the other ones. So did he go against the order of Muhammad? Did he go against Allah?
Who cares? I mean, you're missing the most important point of what you just said.
No, no, I know. But again, on
Alan, how can you can read it any way you want, but how is it written?
impossible.
Hey,
Alan,
let me
can I
just give
ask
you an
one
example.
question?
Today, if you go to Cairo today and you get a Al Fajr newspaper,
Hmm.
which is a newspaper that's read all over the Muslim world, you
Hmm.
notice many times if you look at them, there's no vowelization on any of those newspapers. Why do they keep the vowels off those newspapers?
Why?
Yeah,
Um,
in Arabic. Because they want those newspapers to be sold in Libya. They want it to be sold up in Syria. They want it to be sold
so
way
they
down in
can
Yemen.
read it? Is
That
it?
you,
It's
and
possible to read it?
you read it you read the consonants, you put your own vowels in depending on what dialect you are. That's why
Mm.
they do it, so they get a much higher readership. Even today in the 21st century, they do that. That's why it doesn't make any sense that he's saying to Zaid ibn Thabit, who is the secretary, who's going to
Secretary.
write down now, write it in the Qureshi dialect. How can you write it in a dialectical form if there's no vowels?
True, true. But there's another
Bingo.
problem as well. As I said, who ordered Usman to burn Quran? On
Well, there
which
was no
behalf?
Umar. I
How
mean,
could
that's I mean,
Uthman?
if you want to go with that argument, the most powerful argument is one I
But
just gave
he
you.
basically exactly. But he basically went against Muhammad's order. Muhammad specifically said,
There was no Muhammad anyway, so who cares?
I know." But again, if you read what they say, Muhammad said, "Read it as you like it." Uthman said, "No, let's keep just one copy." Anyway, so that's another problem. Boris, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, yes, thank you. I have two little questions, if it's possible. Mr. Smith, you talked about Al-Bukhari, and sometimes in debate with Muslim, I use Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. You know this Islamic scientist, and he's living in 14
Scholar.
years and
Yeah.
14th century scholars, yeah. And he said directly about al-Bukhari. One of students of al-Bukhari said, when al-Bukhari died, we found his manuscript, and some of pages was empty, and we added to manuscript of al-Bukhari some words from themselves. For me, it was very shocked about this situation because all of Muslims we have no original manuscript. Alan told before about Al-Bukhari, but the students of Al-Bukhari said we added some words to words of Al-Bukhari, and Hajar al-Asqalani told this in his manuscript. And second question about just your opinion about I'm sorry, Uthman. Yeah, about Uthman, because I saw the Islamic sources about Uthman, because sometimes he came to Jewish society, and some Islamic Sahabs said, "What are you doing, Uthman?" Umar, and you came to Jews, and Jewish said you something worse, and Muhammad sometimes complained to Umar. Do you hear about it? Thank you.
Okay,
Muhammad
you see what
complained
we're
to
doing
Umar.
here in this conversation? We're doing two things simultaneously, and we're contradicting each other simultaneously. Have you noticed that?
Well, we're talking about them as real people. Is that what you're saying?
So,
Yeah.
you two, Alan and Boris, you are so concerned about what the traditions say and all these contradictions within tradition.
Hmm.
I don't even care diddly swat about those contradictions. I've thrown
Okay.
them out. I think they're all fictitious. I think they're all fallacious. Now, you can spend your time unpacking that, but what Muslims are going to say is, why are you going to our traditions when you've already said there's no Muhammad, and you've already said that there is no Uthman, and you already said Abu Bakr? In some ways, you're contradicting yourself. Now, you
Okay.
can do that, but I would be careful that when you're doing that, explain to Muslims that you're now arguing from an internal, what we call internal polemics. Internal polemics is what you two guys are doing.
Okay.
And what you're doing is you're saying, this is what you believe, this is what you are following. I have some problems even with that. So let's look at Muhammad. Let's look at all these traditions. Look at what he said. Let's look at the fact that people are actually doing things that he didn't say. That's what you were doing, Alan.
Hmm.
And that means we're looking at the Muhammad that you also believe in. On my side, I don't even think that those are important anymore. Why are we
Okay.
wasting our time arguing about those? I would like to say, was there even a Muhammad that exists? Absolutely not. Was there a place called Mecca that exists? No, it did not. Is there a Quran in the seventh that exists? No, it did not. And by doing that, I throw out all of these internal debates, because these are the debates that Muslims get angry about. And this is why we're called hate preachers. This is why we're called Islamophobes, because we're besmirching
Exactly.
the name of Muhammad, the Muhammad they love. I don't want to besmirch the name of Muhammad. I've done that for 40 years, and I've gotten death threats, and I've got harassment, and you've just got done telling me how many people are getting killed because we're
Absolutely.
doing too much of
Yeah.
that. I would
Yeah.
rather say,
These
let's
people
just,
have no shame. They cuss my
Alan, let me finish
mother.
up.
They
Let me
curse
finish.
my children, and
Absolutely. I get
very
no cursing anymore. I get no death threats, and I'm not getting struck off the internet anymore because I'm not even getting into that, what I call that cesspool. Let's just stay over here. So for me, I'd rather do what we call the external critique, the historical critique.
yeah.
The external critique and the historical critique is much more damaging, but it is not attacking Muhammad. It's not attacking what Muslims believe. It is not attacking the Quran or what they consider to be sacrosanct. So rather than even getting into this, I don't go this way anymore.
Right.
I just
Right.
stick over here. And for
But
me, my life is much easier.
even something not relating to their dogmatic problem issues, they still get mad. For example, again, 2 days ago we had a stream, and we talked about Zamzam water, and I again relying on what you said, and what you basically said was that American have completely rebuilt this well.
No, we didn't rebuild the well. Sorry, that I didn't say that.
Well,
What I
they
did say is
put
we
pipes,
supplied the water for the
supplied the
well.
water, yes,
That comes
desalinated.
from that desalination plant, and we didn't build those desalination plants with that intended.
Hmm.
They took the water and they took it up to and you can see, you can follow the pipes from Jeddah all the way up to these 11 enormous the largest holding tanks there
Yeah.
in Mecca, and that's where they added some sweetening into it so it tastes better, and that is sent down then to Zamzam in through pipes, and then pushed out through pipes to the faucets that they now fill, and then to the big plants where they fill liters upon thousands upon tens of thousands of liters that are sent all over the world. But you have to thank Bechtel Corporation that build those desalination
Yeah,
plants that
yeah.
give the water to begin with.
But their claim was this happened just a few years ago, for example, but the water was there hundreds of years ago. So when Muslims came to pilgrimage, what did they drink then? That's
Well,
what.
look at Zubayr. There was this what's her name? Queen Zudaida, I think her name is. I can't remember off the top of my head. In the 9th century, in 801, She built an aqueduct coming from Taif up in the mountains, up in the plateau, down to Mecca to accommodate because there was such a problem for pilgrims that early. And by the 8th century, Mecca was well known. Mecca was used as the sanctuary. I have no difficulty with that. But
Hmm.
there was not enough water to accommodate the pilgrims. Pilgrims. That's why the queen from Iraq, what is today Iraq, when she came down and saw that the problem with the water, that she had to build that aqueduct. Now that the you can see the remains of that aqueduct. It's been in
Yeah,
disrepair for many
yeah,
centuries. It's still there today. You can see it, proving that there was a problem from the very beginning with the water that was coming. But at that time, there were not millions of people coming to Mecca. There
hmm,
were just probably a few thousand. So that's why they then had to find other water sources throughout the centuries. And then by 1926, they started when desalination plants were invented. Again, by Western technology. This had nothing come to does not come from
absolutely. Well, even
did
the
not come from
umbrellas.
Arabia.
Did you see
It
the
was us.
umbrellas there? Do you know who made them? Umbrellas in Mecca. Germans. Those
German, yeah.
umbrellas automatically open and close to protect pilgrims from scorching sun.
Most of the faucets and all the utensils and all
Absolutely.
the pipes probably come
Even
from
the
China.
sewage. Every time there's a rain, they're all underwater. So who put the sewage there?
They
Westerns.
claim it's from Allah, and we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
sit there
yeah,
and smile and pat them on the head and say, "Okay, keep
yeah.
claiming it's from Allah." We know really where all these. Listen, what has Islam ever invented in the modern day that we
Mhm.
can say all of us use? Now they
Nothing.
make for scientific knowledge. They make all these claims for the scientific. When you look and unpack those claims, you can see that much of what they claim is from places like what is today Uzbekistan and mostly from India. India is where much of their scientific
Well,
material.
I thought about it as well, but it's easy to explain because if you look at it, the geographical locations of Muslim empire, it was is between the Western Europe, I mean the Europe and the China and India. When you're in the middle of big civilizations, big empires, obviously you would take something from there, you put it all together, and I mean they're humans, they're people. Obviously they can read and write, so they read what Greeks have written, they read what Indians and Chinese have written, and it's very I mean it's very obvious why there was such a uh, scientific progress at a certain age in the Muslim empires. But as soon as they stopped robbing, or
And
there
it
was
all came
nothing,
from the diaspora. It came from the outwards.
exactly, exactly,
Much of it did not exist in the central parts
yeah,
of Southern Empire. And even
those
today, the
those
only reason
numbers that we call Arabic numbers,
they're
Europeans
Indian.
call them Arabic because they came from Arabs, but Arabs themselves took them from India, isn't it?
Sanskrit. It's the Sanskrit numbers.
Yeah, so this is just proves my point. There's nothing that they invented themselves. Everything they claim to be invented by them is actually plagiarized.
And even that argument, Alan, the fact that they make that argument, Alan, why are they so intent about making that
Yeah,
argument?
yeah, good
Because
question.
all
Yeah,
of the Muslim world is so far behind the rest of the world, they
absolutely.
have to find something that they can claim that they can have an identity for. And that's why it's to me, it's it shows a huge weakness and an insecurity by Muslims. They are
Well,
so insecure that they've got to claim anything in their history as this is from Islam. No, it's not from Islam. Islam, if anything, shut that down and shut down research and shut down criticism. Because in order to have research, you have to have a critical mind. And that was only done within Judeo-Christian environment, not within an Islamic
yes,
environment.
yes.
Mr.
Alex,
Smith,
you've been
Alan, if I
quiet.
can, okay.
Boris, you wanted to ask? Go ahead. Okay.
Yes, I have a small question about Muhammad genealogy because during Muhammad time, some people start to make Muhammad genealogy because they say Muhammad from Ismail. But cousin of Muhammad ibn Abbas said he forbade it, and he complained to these people because he said you lost
Yeah,
22 generation about Muhammad. What's your opinion about this situation? Thank you.
I don't think he exists, so why do I care?
yeah, 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 yeah. That's the same
You're going to
question.
get the same response from me, Boris. Everything I say, there
Yeah.
was no Muhammad, and all of that you're even bringing, even the genealogy. When you look at these charts that they have, look and see they're absolutely ridiculous because there's no historical support for any of it.
Absolutely. Alex, you've been quiet. Do you have a question before I go to the next one? No, you're fine? Okay. Um, Okay, as I said before, we mostly do streams in Russian, so there's a huge crowd that listening to us from Russia right now. And the priest that I mentioned is listening to us right now as well. So his question is about Trinity. And this question was posed by Mohammed Hijab when he had a debate with David Wood. His claim was that there is no church father in the first centuries that ever mentioned Trinity. So basically, they're saying that it was invented
Well,
by
the word
Christians.
itself was
Well,
not created, was
the
introduced.
idea, the dogmatic belief of Christians. Also, there was another debate with Muhammad. You actually in London answered him. So, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because you did mention several names of early church fathers that have mentioned Trinity. Can you?
Listen, the man who is the man that actually introduced the word Trinity? It was Tertullian in 185 AD. The word itself did not exist.
Okay.
Nobody doubts that. Just like in if you have the word Wahid in the Quran, see if you can find it in the Quran, the
Tawheed.
oneness of God.
Yeah. Tawheed
Tawhid,
does
sorry,
not
Tawhid.
exist. Yes.
Tawhid doesn't exist either in the Quran. So I mean that's just a matter of tit for tat, tit for tat. Who cares? Of course, the idea of the Trinity, the word itself, the idea is right through Scripture. The Scriptures that existed, it's right there in
Hmm.
the Old Testament, and they've been around since for 3,200 years, but not the word itself. The word itself was then coined by Tertullian in 185 AD to explain what we read in Scripture. So I don't have a problem there. Hijab has a difficulty saying, where's the Trinity in the
Fine,
first
but
century?
on your debate with him in London, you did mention a few names. What did he say?
After the second century, everybody used that name. But remember, it took them a while to get to that. Something they call it Trinitas for a while. That didn't work. So finally they finally landed on Trinity in 185. So post 195, everybody used that name. All the church fathers used it.
Okay. Also, another question from him is about Orthodoxy, Orthodox Church. He
Yeah.
is asking if you know the difference between Orthodox Christianity, Catholic Christianity, and Protestantism. Um, I guess he wants to know your opinion on that.
I have no difficulty with the Orthodox Church or the Catholics. I work with Catholics. I work with Orthodox. I go to Ethiopia and I'm working with the Orthodox Church there. I don't have a difficulty because almost all the differences between the three major Protestant, Catholic, and Orthodox have nothing to do with the foundations of Christianity.
Hmm.
It has to do with doctrine of how you worship or what you consider, what you bring into your worship styles. For me, that is superfluous. It's not that important. All I want to know is, do the Orthodox believe that Jesus is God and that God was the one that died on the cross and rose again? And in every case, the Orthodox, the Catholics, and the Protestants all agree.
I agree with you. And that's why we never speak about Christian denominations. We have friends from all over the world, different denominations. We never have any problems.
No
In
problem.
fact, even Muslims, a Muslim from Kazakhstan, for example, he became a Catholic because he lives in Western Europe. Other Muslims became Orthodox because they live in Russia. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I never have any
They're
issues
my
as well.
brothers in Christ, and they're going to be in heaven with me. So what I won't do is I won't accept anybody who doesn't believe that was God that was on the cross.
Right.
And that's the shibboleth. That there's lots of missionaries who are now going around the Muslim world, and they're only demanding that Muslims claim that Jesus is Lord and Savior. That's not good enough for me, because any Muslim could claim that. Lord means someone who is in authority. A Lord, like we have a House of Lords in Britain, and most of them are senile. That is not God. All right. And Savior, well, that's the function of every prophet. What I want them to hear to say is, do you believe Jesus is Allah? That's the shibboleth I'm looking for. If they can say yes, that Jesus is God, and that He is part of the. Now, after that, of course, if He is Allah, then how can He be Allah along with Allah? You've then got to say, well, Allah is Allah, Jesus is Allah, and so is the Holy Spirit Allah. Bingo. Then we're on board with each other.
Yeah. A question about different Qurans. It's a very important question. You've mentioned several times that you have a team, I guess in UK, people who work on different manuscripts, and you found up to 90,000 differences between Quranic.
Actually,
So,
Muhammad,
say it again?
that's it's now over 100,000
Over
now. It's
100,000. Will
That's Hutton's team found that, not
right,
me. Hutton's
right.
team found
So
that
the
in London.
question is, will this be published? Because this is going to
Yes.
be a atomic bomb for Muslims.
Well, it's already atomic bomb. We just showed up when we held up those 26 Qurans in 2016. Look at the damage that did. Nobody realized that those Qurans existed. I've got 9 right up there. Look at that. I'm showing you those are 9 different Qurans. Those are all qira'ats.
Yeah,
Those green ones. So you can buy them on the internet today,
right.
and you really only need to show 2 of them, the Hafs and the Warsh, just those 2, because the Hafs is the one that is now memorized by 93% of the Muslim world's population. The Warsh is memorized by 3% of the world's population. So let me show you what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
These, this is the Warsh, the black one, and this is the Hafs, the green one. So this is the one that is now been made made the authoritative Quran by King Fahd in 1985, this one here. So that's why 93% of the Muslim world memorizes this. It will increase and increase and increase because this is the only one you get to buy when you're in the Europe and the Western world. This one here, however, that was created by a guy named Warsh in 812, or just before he died in 812, in Cairo. This one is memorized by all the North African Muslims, and that's about 3% of all Muslims. But
Right.
just between these 2 books, there are 5,000 differences, 5,000 different words. If you have 5,000 different words, that means 5,000 different meanings. Many of them have different doctrines, different theologies, and also different practices. So look at the damage that just these 2 do. Considering, and then when you look at this one in comparison with the other 29, because there's 30 official qira'ats that were made official by the 15th century, 1429 by Al-Jazari.
Can we call them versions, or or this is Kiras purely like
Be careful
reading?
versions because we have many English versions which are not different. They're just ways of different saying. These are not versions. These are actual Quranic Arabic Qurans. So this would be equivalent to a Greek New Testament or a Hebrew Old Testament. That's what you need to do. So these are the original text. That's why it's so damaging. These are all the dots and vowels that have been changed and manipulated and created after the 8th century. So that's why they're all from the 8th, 9th, and 10th century.
Okay, so again, the question is, will this be published? Your research, well, your friends' research, all
Shadi Nasser
those.
is doing it. This is all coming from Dr. Shadi Nasser out of Harvard University. I don't have to
No,
do it.
no, no.
He's doing
The differences, over 100,000 differences.
Oh, that.
Will.
Well, I mean, okay, all you need is one. We have, I mean, Hatun and I, back in 2016, the day that we held them up in June of 2016, the very next day, we showed 42 examples. We have them. I have them right in my computer here. And in fact, we were showing them at Speaker's Corner. Thank God we laminated them. We were showing, look at the difference between Hafs and Warsh, Hafs
Mhm.
and Al-Qur'an, Hafs and
Well,
Al
they will tell you it's just
and they
different
were grabbing
readings.
them out of our hands and trying to tear them up. They
We saw
couldn't.
that. We all saw that. We all saw how Muhammad Hijab came and he tried to redirect their
Come to me.
attention.
I'll explain them. I'll
Yes,
explain.
yes.
And then look what happened 4 years later when he was not unable to explain it. He had to have that infamous interview with Dr. Yasser Qadhi.
Absolutely. We all saw that. It was humiliating. It was, I mean, your summary was excellent. And they got so upset. I remember they began to insult you, insult David Wood, because they had nothing to say. And at the
They
end,
were
they,
called ultra crepidarians.
yes, yes. At the end, they just deleted the video from their channels. But it was too late. I copied it. You copied it. Many other people copied it. It was translated to many different languages. To this day, we still refer to this video and we ask Muslims, what is he talking about? Again, Muslim,
Every
yeah,
June 20th, like I just did it last June 20th,
yes,
I do another recording. I did it with David Wood. David and I did it together. We were both in London at that time. We went up there. Sorry, I did it earlier because we were in earlier together, and we put it up there. We go up there and we just say we're going to celebrate June 20th every year just to remind the world of what happened on 2020. Was it June 20th? June 8th, sorry. June 8th, 2020, not June 20th. June 8th. We both, David Wood and I, were in London together and we did a video together holding it up and just saying, and we had little cupcakes in our hand. It says this is a celebration, a birthday celebration of the eradication, destruction of the Quran on June 8th, 2020, and we ate our cupcakes as
Right.
as to commemorate it. And we'll do that every year. We'll do it. He puts up a video, I put up a video, usually Hatun puts up a video, just to remind the world of what happened in that interview.
All right. Does this program Zoom, does it allow you to share my screen with you?
Yeah,
Because I
you can
wanted
do
to
that.
show you. It does?
Yeah.
Where do I go? Video and then
Down to where it says share at the bottom.
share at the bottom.
Yeah, at the bottom, look at the digits. Look at where it says share.
I don't see that anywhere. Do I click more?
Hit
Oh,
more.
okay. I see share. And now I can share. All right.
Go and hit it,
Okay.
and then it'll
Okay.
show you your desktop. It needs to be open on your
All
desktop.
right. Yes, it is. Okay. It's taking a little time. Send to Zoom.
Okay, we see it now. Rockefeller Archaeological Museum.
Right. Have you heard about this? Do you know what this is?
No, I haven't.
All right. So I did not find the pictures, but I found them on a different site. So these are the pictures from the museum. Take a look at. Why does it keep asking me to send? Zoom quit unexpectedly. Always send. Okay. It stopped.
Recording in progress.
It stopped.
Yeah, you stop the recording.
It's working now. It's recording now.
Okay, you start it up again. You hit the wrong button.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep. I see Diana, and I see it looks like a medallion or
Yes.
something.
Yeah. It's a fresque, I guess, on the wall or something. But look at this. I will show you right here. Can you see this?
Yep.
This is a Rockefeller Museum, and this is a castle of somebody named by Hisham. He was a caliph. Now, this museum, I just want to make sure people can see it on YouTube. Just a second. This museum is in Israel, and as you can see in the museum, they show what this caliph had in his castle, particularly the sculptures of people, women dancing, their faces, the animals. There are pictures of animals, pictures of women, sculptures of people, sculptures of women dancing. There's more. I only found this. So again, this is the beginning of Islam. I don't remember exactly the century, what century it was, but I mean, it's clear that if a caliph was allowed to do something like this, obviously there was no Islam. Obviously, Sharia did not exist. Islamic law did not exist. I mean, you can't imagine caliph going against Allah's order, right? If Muhammad prohibited drawing faces, making sculptures, why on earth would caliph do that? How could caliph go against Muhammad, his own prophet, his own God, and make something like this in his castle? And it was fine to everyone. It goes the same with coins. If coins were minted with faces, with people holding crosses, I mean, obviously there was no prohibition. Obviously there was no Islam. So when we show this to Muslims, when you show this to Muslims, what is their response? How do they respond when they see the coins? Is it the same as Dr. King said from UK regarding the Qiblas? Oh, Arabs were so dumb, they didn't know how to build. They did not know how to build their mosques. That's why they all built them facing Jerusalem. Or they could not find Mecca. They did not have compasses. So this is the same issue here. They
I mean,
did it.
here's
Yeah.
a coin I'm putting up right now. See that coin?
I have to stop transmission. 1 second.
Stop sharing.
Yes.
Don't stop
Yeah,
transmission.
yeah. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, now look at this. See here?
1 second. I just want to make sure people can see that. Yes.
You see there's a man's image on that.
Yes.
That's Muawiyah.
Amazing. Holding a cross.
Holding a cross above his head, two crosses. How can a Muslim caliph of the Umayyad Caliph, the first of the Umayyad Caliph, be holding crosses, and how can his image be on a coin?
Exactly,
That's
same
against everything that
question.
Islam believes.
So not only coins, they did the same thing in their castles, in their houses. In fact, there's a famous building, I think it was a bath, public bath, that had a cross on it. Do you know about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So again, they did not see any problems with that. And again, Muhammad,
Here's the Mimha
mm,
Mimdal. The one you see at the bottom. There's a Mimha Mimdal. This is again the Caliph Muawiyah. There
yeah.
he is on the front. This is a bad one, not a very good one. There are better ones than this that you can buy. That's the only one I've been able to get a
And
hold of.
again,
So
if you read what hadith, what Muhammad was teaching, you can see all kinds of silly things like teaching Muslims how to you know urinate or how to wipe your butt with the stones. Really, really dumb thing. How he was counting fingers on a lizard, or how to drink water, how to pass gas in the mosque. I mean, ridiculous things. Did he never teach them that you cannot mint coins with my pictures on it, with people's faces on it, holding crosses? Well, Muslims say, well, he did not know. I mean, what do you know he did not know? He taught you how to urinate and he did not know anything about coins? How did Christians pay jizya then? There's a hadith saying Muhammad had crosses in his house. Crosses. I asked Muslims this question, how he could have crosses in his house. You know what they said? Well, when Christians paid jizya, apparently they had crosses on their clothing. So that's why he got it. It's an unbelievable explanation, absolutely unreal, but this is what they say. So I want to go back to Dr. King, I think that's his name is, his reply to Dan Gibson research. Did he really say that Arabs, Bedouins, were so dumb that they could not build their mosque properly? Was that really what he said?
no, what he was saying is that they use mathematics from the Orientalist time, from the time of the ninth century on.
No,
They use
he
math.
said they couldn't find Qibla, right?
Now here's the irony of that. If you look at all the Qiblas up until 706, all the Qiblas up until 706, which are face either Jerusalem or Petra, they are within 2 degrees off. All the Qiblas that he's claiming to be so accurate,
Hmm.
the Meccan Qiblas,
Hmm.
are over 4 and over off, which means they're twice as out of line as the earliest Qiblas. So right there, that destroys that argument. That actually the Bedouins, those who were the Nabateans, who were traders on camels that went across great
Exactly.
swaths
That
of
was
land.
my point. They knew their way around. They knew what is this? They
This
knew
is my
what to do. They could
my
find
computer
their
loves it when
way.
I get into these arguments. They put up balloons for me.
Yeah. They knew how to find their way at night just by looking at the stars. And yet they could not build Qiblas directly directed to Mecca. This is ridiculous. But
And the
that's
reason is very simple, Alan. If you're a Bedouin going across the deserts where there is no landmarks and you have to get to a well that will save your life, you better
Mhm.
know how to get to that well. That could be
Exactly.
a few hundred yards off, you're going to die. That's why you have to use the stars. No wonder they were so accurate within 2 degrees. Once you were no longer, once roads were built, which they were by the Persians, they were all built by during the Abbasid period. Roads, you didn't need to go across deserts anymore. So that whole ability to read the stars was lost. That's why they had to go to mathematics, and their mathematics was very crude. That's why King does not want to admit that the mathematically delineated Qiblas are more inaccurate than those which came earlier. And in other words, they regressed in their
Right.
ability.
But what about mosques that have Qiblas directed towards Sahara desert? What about them?
Okay, now that is completely different. That has to do with political gain, and it has to do with
Political gain?
what you're doing is that's in North Africa and in Spain.
Uh,
Those mosques
yeah, yeah.
are look at the dates that they were erected. They were all erected in the 8th century,
Right. Why not
beginning of the
direct them to Mecca?
because they remember you had two different groups that were vying for political power at that time. You had the Umayyads who had their mosques all facing towards Petra. And then you have the Lakhmids who are coming into power. They were gaining power. They did not get power until 750, mid into the 8th century, and their sanctuary would have been Mecca by that time. So who are you going to follow? Are you going to follow the Lakhmids or the Umayyads? Depending on who you follow, you're going to have either an out or an in with them. So that's why they just hedged their bets and went straight south. They didn't want to go. They went parallel to that line between Petra and Mecca. That's why it's very
But
simple.
okay,
You look
see,
see what's happening politically on the
Dan
ground.
Gibson personally, physically went to every mosque to research the Qibla, isn't it? Whereas Dr. King
And what was King's biggest complaint
has
about?
never been there, was he?
No, he only went to one mosque, and that was in Samarkand.
So,
But what was King's biggest complaint against Gibson for
oh,
doing that?
why didn't you not ask me? Was
No,
that no?
not what his biggest complaint was.
What was it then?
His biggest complaint was, how dare you use modern technology to find your accuracy when they didn't have this modern technology back
Right,
then?
right. Unbelievable.
Oh, that was
And
a
he's a
great one.
professor. Is he still around?
I don't know if he is or not.
No.
He wrote this. He wrote his rebuttal about 10 years ago. I'm sure he is still living, but he's
Yeah,
getting pretty old.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we often speak about Dan Gibson and his research. Luckily, he did videos on many different languages, including Russian. So we all saw what he did. Great work. Um, Alex, again, going to you.
Yeah,
Do you
I
have
have
a
a question.
question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thanks for asking. Dr. J, uh, do you think who created the Quran? When it was created, do you think?
Who wrote the Quran?
Or first, who created, like, which year, which century do you think it was?
I'm not going to answer that. I have no idea because we don't have any Quran that is complete like the Quran we have today that we can look at. None of the earliest manuscripts, the Samarkand, the Ma'il, the Petropolitanus, the Topkapi, the Huzayni, and the Sana'a manuscript, those 6 major manuscripts, you remember that I debated back in 2014, 10 years ago. Hey, look, there's the thumbs up. Those 6 manuscripts, all of them are 8th and 9th century. There is a book that's just come out. I've got it. First one, the Topkapi. This is the first academic book. This is a doctoral thesis by my good friend Rami Hussein Halasi. I just got it yesterday. You've got to buy this. Now it's $129, so it's very expensive. This is going to be the first actual complete, thorough study of the probably the best of all the Qurans. And he's putting this to the 9th century. So he's putting it late 8th century, early 9th century. So you can see the problem. And this is not even complete. This has 2,270 variants in it. So it's not even a complete Quran. It's about 99% of the Quran, but much of it probably was introduced at a later date. So I'm just getting into it. We're going to have an awful lot of material. So this is the problem. Alex, nobody has been able to answer your question. I can't answer that question because no one has dared to do to the Quran what we've done to the Bible. No one has really. We're the first ones to ask that question. And because of the fact we're asking that question, we're getting death threats. So can you see why even Rami, who is now works out of Harvard University, that's where he got he's now working at Harvard University. He has to be careful what he says in this book. But he is coming out pretty strong with what we are now. This is all yet to go up on the internet when what we're finding out about this manuscript, but it's going to be fun. Now, can we find the first complete Quran? Nobody has been able to answer that question. Nobody will be able to answer that question until we're given access to all the manuscripts. We're not giving access to them. They won't let us look at them. They won't let us do any forensic testing on them because of their fear of what we will find. Because they saw what happened when Altıkılıç and Ekmel Osanlu, when they came out with their studies in 2007. Sorry, 2007 is when they finished, but they came out in 2014 with their English translation of it. And look and see what happened. Look what I did with it just by using and quoting them there with Shabirati. He's yet to be able to respond to that. And that's 10 years now. No one's been able to respond to it. So they're not letting us get access to the original manuscripts to do this kind of forensic testing. At some point, at some time, we're going to have access to it. And at that time, then I can answer your question.
Mhm. And another question, follow question is, who do you think actually worked on the Quran? If it's not Muhammad, so do you think it was a body of sort of scholars back in, I don't know, in Syria or where, who were commissioned by Abdul Malik or somebody else to create the book? What do you think?
Listen, I can't even answer that question because no one's asked that question to be able to run it down. I will say this. Probably the best way to answer that is to go to John of Damascus. Who was John of Damascus? He was living in Damascus. He was living at the time of Abdul Malik. He was in the courts of Abdul Malik. His father also is from Damascus. His father, who is a Christian, was living in the courts of Muawiyah. So Muawiyah, who was a caliph for 20 years, and then Marwan, who took over, and his son Abdul Malik, who was from 685 to 705. That's when most people, most scholars, like you look at a scholar, Dr. Stephen Shoemaker came out with a book. I've got it back here, and I've unpacked that. I did 60 episodes on that, just looking at what he is saying. And he believes that the Quran began to be put together. Its nascent Quran began to be put together under Abdul Malik or Walid, his son. Now, to be fair, let's then go to John of Damascus. John of Damascus is writing in 730. He's now retired. He's been there in the Caliphate course, watching this very thing happen. It is Abdul Malik who, along with Al-Hajjaj, who is his governor in Iraq, they are the ones that are amalgamating and grabbing and taking things from many different sources. They're taking it from Syriac sources. They're taking it from Jewish Hebraic sources. They're taking it from Ethiopic sources. They're taking it from Zoroastrian sources. That's why the Quran, we can pretty well trace it back to all these sources. That's why it's so exciting to see we even know the names and the dates of when those sources were written. But hold on, it did become a Quran at that time because John of Damascus is right there. And what does he say? He finally goes into retirement. He goes into the monastery and he writes his masterpiece. And what does he title it? The Heresy of the Ishmaelites. Read that title. That title tells you everything. What he says, and he's very clear that these people, these Ishmaelites, they're heretic. They are anti-Trinitarian heresy. And he talks about Muhammad. Now, this is 730. We're well into the 8th century. Muhammad is now the third Muhammad. This is, remember, the Jews are waiting for the Muhammad, the Messiah to return the first time. The Christians are waiting for the Messiah to return the second time, both refer to Muhammad as the title. Now there you have the Ishmaelites who don't have a prophetic line. They don't have a revelation. And yet they have more land than the Christians do. And they now control the holy place, Jerusalem, for both the Christians and Jews. How do you create an identity that's equal to theirs since you both, all three of you, trace your lineage back to Abraham? You have to create a prophet. And then a prophet has to have a book. So now the prophet is now named as the Muhammad. Why? Because they're saying, you were still waiting for the Muhammad. You Jews for the first time, you Christians for the second time. We have the Muhammad. We have it. And look how John Damascus plays. He says Muhammad, mim ha mim, and it's a T, not a D. So he's using the Persian spelling, which means this is the Muhammad from Lakhmid area. Now, what does he say? He says this man has terrible doctrines. And then he names the books that this man is writing. The book of the cow, that becomes later on Surah 2. The book of the women, that becomes Surah 4. The book of the table, that becomes Surah 5. And the book of the camel. Camel? There's no surah called camel. So here by 730, now we're well into the 8th century, you have 4 books, but what about the other 110? Remember, there's 114 books in the Quran. And one of them no longer is not any of them. So really, there's only 3 of them that finally make their way into the Quran. So obviously, by 8th century, there still is no Quran. There's 4 different books attributed to this prophet, who then the Lakhmids then introduce many other books, and that's why we're up to 114 today.
I think John of Damascus refer mistakenly the Surah 6 cattle, not camel.
It's called a camel in
Yeah,
Arabic.
but I think it's he referred to cattle because there is a Surah.
Possibly, but obviously it's not a book. Well, I would just suggest that that was probably thrown out and replaced by cattle later on, because we don't know when we don't know when that they were named, and we don't know why they were named. But so we don't know the dates for that. We just have to go with what we know.
Yeah.
It could be cattle. You're right.
Woman,
But you're missing 110 books then. Where are the other 110? So even by the 8th century, there was no Quran that was complete. They were still creating it. And that's why it's so important you need to read Al-Kindi. Because Al-Kindi is in the 9th century. He is there in the court of Mamun. And he is there in the courts of Mamun, there in Baghdad. Now we're in Baghdad because we're during the Abbasid period. In the court of Mamun, in the 9th century, he is saying, why is it you're putting together this book that you're taking away and throwing out? He is actually watching this firsthand. He has seen the Quran still being put together in the 9th century. Now, up till now, we never knew what Al-Kindi was talking about. We thought this guy is just off his head, or maybe he was just sitting there as a typical, he was just doing a typical polemic against it. We now know exactly what's going on because the Quran was still being put together in the 9th century, and Al-Kindi was a testimony to that. He was a witness to that. That's the first time that we get a window into even in the 9th century. So when is the Quran finally compiled? Getting back to your first question, I would guess by the 10th century, all 114 surahs were in place.
At beginning, it will be 8th century, do you think?
Beginning in the 8th century, because there are certainly 4 books by 730.
So
It's
which is actually,
non-Damascus.
yeah, if it's cattle, a camel is a cattle, so it will be Surah 2, 4, 5, and 6 in
Possibly, who knows? We don't care. For me, it's not that important. It's more important that it's not 114.
Okay.
The follow-up question, do you know who Marine van Putten is?
Martin van Putten, yes, he is
You know,
a scholar who claims very clearly that the Quran was created by Uthman. He has no way of doing that. The only way he does that is by trying to find similarities in Quranic passages on different manuscripts. So he creates a Q source. And we did that with the scriptures as well. So he's following historical criticism or textual criticism of the Bible, and he's trying to apply it to the Quran. The difficulty is he wants to find that Q source and he wants to create it out ex nihilo. There is no manuscript that supports that Q source that early.
what did he want to do again? Can you repeat that?
An archetype. A Q source means an archetype, an original Quran.
Because he claimed that Muslims have a Quran in the 1st century of
Oh, he
Hijra.
claims that Uthman did have a Quran in the 1st century, and that Quran existed in Mecca, in Medina, and that all 114 surahs were in that Quran.
Yeah, but
But
what is he
no manuscript
basing
to
his
support that.
arguments on? Upon what?
He
You have
based it by looking at different references in of the manuscripts and showing that there are similarities in the manuscripts. Therefore, that the similarities is what the Q source is from.
So there is no Quran complete in the 7th century.
Nothing. No, show me one.
That's why when I heard this name, when I first heard this name, Marine van Putten, I thought it was a joke. Somebody's making joke with Marine Le Pen and
Van
Vladimir
Putin, you need to be careful
Putin.
because Martin Van Putin is being paid by an awful lot of petrodollars. So he has to hold to the Islamic narrative. That's why he's saying this. But very few scholars would be able to would come out and say what he's saying. It's just a matter of time before people are going to start confronting him.
Because he was interviewed by Muslims, and obviously he told them that they have a manuscripts, and now they're all proud and boasting all over. Anyway, yeah.
Можно вопрос?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Smith, 2 small questions. At first, you talk about the Quran, and Alex asked you about it too. And if you read Al-Bukhari 4999, he said directly all of his followers take Quran from 4th. 2 people died, and he said Abdullah ibn Masud and Ubay ibn Ka'b. And it was a direct statement. But why Muslim, for your opinion, refused his direct statement and took Quran from half? Because Quran ibn Masud counted 111 surahs, and Quran ibn Ka'b counted 116 surahs. What are you thinking about it? Thank you.
Yeah, now this is something that's been around for 100 years. This is Arthur Jeffrey brought this argument back in the 1930s. Not quite 100 years now. And he made the same claim that you're just making. And that is when you look at the standard Islamic narrative, which are probably now 12th, 13th, and 14th century, not 8th, 9th, 9th, and 10th century, like we've been claiming. And when you look at what they're saying, he just looked at their traditions on what they claimed was the 4 metropolitan codices. The first one would be Zayd ibn Thabit. That's the one that Van Putten and everybody believes is the Uthmanic recension. Then you have a codex that was written in Damascus and written by a man named Ubay ibn Ka'b. Now, according to the traditions, that manuscript, that Quran, had 116 surahs. I don't know where you got 111 from, but that had 2 extra surahs that don't exist in Zayd ibn Thabit's rendition. Then you had another Quran that appeared in the late 7th century, written by Ibn Masud. That only had 110 surahs. That's 4 less than the Quran we have today. And then you had a 4th one that appeared in Basra that was written by Musa. And so that one did have 114 surahs. But according to Arthur Jeffrey, who did this work almost 100 years ago, he said when you looked at all the references and all the traditions about these four different metropolitan Quran, he found 15,000 differences. So that's been around for almost 100 years. What do I think about that? I would say, again, that's all traditional writers. I don't really care for the traditional writers. They're just making it up and creating it as they go. I would like to know who and where is there any Quran from Ibn Masud or Ibn Musa or Ubay ibn Ka'b or Zayd ibn Thabit from the 7th century. Bingo.
Yeah, and again, why Hafs? Hafs is named to be a liar.
But don't confuse Hafs with this. That's a different argument.
Yeah.
Hafs is Qira'at, all right? We're talking about consonantal manuscripts.
Okay.
So consonantal manuscripts is a different argument than the Qira'at argument. Completely different arguments and completely different centuries.
Okay, why was there no Bible in Arabic before Islam? What do you
Well, I
think?
mean, we know, we don't know for sure. What we do know is that the earliest one we can come across is the Codex Sinaiticus 151 that's in St. Catherine's Monastery today.
Mhm.
That is the first Arabic translation of the New Testament. And that was written in 868. So it's
So
late
after,
into the century.
yes. So why wasn't there an alphabet prior to advent of Islam?
Okay, but stop and think that through, Alan. Where do you think the Quran did come from?
Christian apocryphal writings, Talmud,
Bingo. But in what language?
perhaps Arabic. Hence, you have
Well, if it's
Birmingham manuscript, right?
like the Birmingham's manuscript. Okay, there's a case in point. Let's look at the Birmingham manuscript, which is just 2 folios, front and back.
Yeah.
63 verses on those 2 folios. When you look at them, they are parts. There go the balloons again. Sorry about that. There are parts of Surah 18, Surah 19, and Surah 20. But look at what they are. They are stories. One is a fictitious story about the 7 sleepers of Ephesus. That's a pagan story. One of them is about the Pseudo Matthias, which is first written in the 2nd century and then repeated in its much greater form in the 5th century, and that's what you find in Surah 19. And then the other in Surah 20 is the story of Moses, which comes straight out of the Talmud,
Yes.
Bible itself, not the Talmud, the Bible itself. So these are all pre-Islamic, they're pre-Quranic, and they would have all been well around. They would have been used in the 8th and 9th century in Arabic at that time, but notice they were not pointed. There was no pointing on them. If you look at the
What do you
Birmingham,
mean pointing?
no points and there's no vowels.
Okay. So how do Muslims respond to you when you tell them this?
Well, they haven't. No one's really come up with and I said, you know what? What's your beef? Of course, if you're going to borrow anything, if
This
you're going
is
to borrow
plagiarism. This is not a borrowing. They just
If you're-
copied it. They claim
Alan,
it's
Alan,
from
Alan.
Allah.
Alan, just think. If you're going to borrow them, they have to predate them, don't they? They have to be
Well,
there in order to be borrowed. These
the
all
ma-
were borrowed.
Birmingham
They trace them all
manuscript
the way back to the
was
2nd century.
it was carbon dated prior to Muhammad's birth. Isn't that a problem?
You're missing the point.
Hmm.
Who cares? Listen, if you want to say 568 to 645, that's the carbon dating
Yes.
of the manuscript itself. Fine, keep that.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that because those 3 stories would have all been existed long before 568
Right.
in
So
Arabic.
Isn't that a
So what do we-
problem? This is clear problem for them, I mean. So they
Absolutely.
claim it's from Allah, but we say
No.
it's been around for years. How can you claim something already existing in the manuscript and you say no, Muhammad got it from Jibril? And I actually asked this question a couple of days ago. I told them, if you admit that this is Christian apocryphal writing, if you admit the conversation of what do you call Islamic prophet who spoke to the ant in the Quran, what's his name?
You're talking about Solomon
Suleiman, exactly. Suleiman
in
speaking to
Surah
the ant.
27.
Yeah, it's a fairy tale from Talmud. If you admit it, and then you say no, it's from Allah, Jibril delivered it to Muhammad, and he said, well, Muhammad did not know that this was a Christian apocryphal writing or it was a Talmud. I mean, this is
It's
a
almost word
ridiculous,
for word the same as the 2nd
unbelievable.
Talmud of Esther. The
Yeah.
2nd Talmud of Esther was written in first due in Hebrew, and then it was translated into Arabic sometime after the 2nd century AD. By the 6th century, it was well known, and it is nothing more than an apocryphal fable. It was a children's bedtime tale with putting biblical names.
Exactly. And they see no problems. And I said, okay, when I tell them, okay, how about copies or plagiarism from Gospels? And they say, well, we have one God, therefore text should be the same. Again,
What
ridiculous.
about Surah 23 and Surah 70, which is a poem straight from the pen of Saint Ephrem in the 4th century? Word for word the same until you get to verse 5 and 6. When you get to verse 5 and 6, it's an interpolation that's added at a later date about the word of chastity. And it was introduced as to define what chastity means for that which your right hand possesseth and the
I
multiple wives.
remember you said that before. Yeah. How about hymns?
That has
They
nothing to
also
do with
stole
God.
hymns,
That's a hymn
right?
from Saint Ephrem.
What about Christian hymns?
Hymns the same way. Those are all written by Christians, written in the 5th and 6th century in Syriac, then introduced into Arabic in the 7th century.
So is there anything in Quran that is unique that has not been around?
Oh, we can't know because there's lots of the Quran that it's superfluous. It's narration. It's not, but the what we call the dark passages and the beautiful poetry that we can trace back to Syriac hymns, Syriac lectionaries, and Syriac homilies.
Right. But till this day, this was one of my questions on the debate with one of Muslims, authority. They call him authority because he's one of the most knowledgeable Russian Muslims who speak Arabic. I asked him very simple questions since they mentioned corruption of the Bible, corruption of Torah. The question was, what does Injil and Torah mean in Arabic? Since it clearly says that Quran is written in clear Arabic, where everything is explained in details. So I asked him a very simple question. What does Injil mean? What does Torah mean? What does Isa mean? Or Israel mean? What do you think he answered me?
I don't know. What did he answer?
He said, those are Hebrew words that have become Arabic. Can you believe it? Hebrew words becoming Arabic and lost meaning. That's exactly what he said to me. They do not know what they mean. They have no idea what Injil mean. They have no idea what was written in that book. They have no idea what language was it written in. They have no idea when it was written, what happened to this book. Who is Isa? I asked them. They have no idea who that is. When was Isa born? No idea. Where Isa born? No idea. Why did Isa come? Well, to say to believe in one God. Okay, belief in one God existed before Islam, so this is nothing new. So again, why did Isa come to earth? They don't know. They know he's going to come again, but why he came the first time, they have no idea. All they know is he failed his mission, because if he got a book and he gave it to Christians, and Christians supposedly corrupted it, well, then obvious question is, what was the purpose of his coming to earth if everything that he got is completely lost? Did Allah make a mistake? Again, no answer.
This is an Arabic book in the Arabic language for the Arabic people. Why is that repeated over and over and over again in the Quran? Why do you think?
The Gospels? The Injil?
No, in Arabic.
Why does it say always Arabic?
The Arabic people in the Arabic language. Why would you need to repeat that over and over again?
At least 10 times. I have no idea. Maybe to signify so that nobody would doubt that it was in Arabic.
No, it's obviously in contradistinction to what? So there has to be something. So this is a clear proof that this was borrowed from Syriac and Hebrew and possibly Zoroastrian, and therefore had to be. This book is not like those. This is the Arabic Quran. It's not Zoroastrian. It's not Hebrew. It's not Syriac. In the Arabic language, it's not those languages for the Arabic people. That's why you have to keep insinuating it, because they're in competition to something else. Because people were saying, hold on, we've already heard this. We know this is we've already seen this. We know it's in Arabic. I'm sorry, it's in Hebrew. It's also in Syriac. It's in Aramaic. Also, it's in Ethiopic. So this was a discussion that was happening in the 9th and 10th century. That's why you had to have over and over again. This is an Arabic book in the Arabic Quran for the
Yes.
Arabic people.
Not only
Otherwise, that
that,
makes no sense.
not only that, did you notice Quran also has, I think, more than 10 times it says those stories are the legends of the ancients. Did you notice that? The Bedouins told that to Muhammad, supposedly. We know these stories. Why are you telling them again? We know them. Legends of the ancients. It says that in Quran several times. And again, despite this fact, Muslims still claim that it's from Allah. Legends from the ancients, but it's from Allah. You know. Okay, probably the last question would be a little bit political question. All this migration to the West, Islamization, this is happening all over the world. Difficult question, I know. Why? Why would Western government allow such a huge migration? Why would they allow, well, basically destruction of their own culture? We see the same thing happening in Russia. By millions they come to Russian cities, they build mosques, they get married. Obviously the children are born Muslims. Russian Christian are upset, but if you say a word, immediately you'll be blamed Islamophobe, racist, whatever. Why do you think this is happening, and what can we do to, we can't stop it, but what can we do to oppose it, I guess?
I don't think you can stop it. It's unfortunate. I
Yeah.
think the difficulty is this. Most of your conflicts in the world involve Muslim countries.
Yeah.
I mean, what's a famous book that was written in 1996? Huntington's book, Clash of Civilization. He wrote it in 1996. This is before 9/11. And he said in the 21st century, he said, when you look at the wars that happened today, this is the 1996, 20 wars that existed in 1996, 18 of them involved Muslim countries. He says, Islam has bloody borders. And what he meant by that is that Islam is in conflict with its neighbor and it's in conflict with itself. So therefore, in 21st century, almost all of your conflicts are going to be Muslim conflicts with others. And that's true. We're seeing that almost every day. Open any newspaper and you will see some country, some Muslim country is in conflict with itself or with its neighbor. So when you are in conflict, you create refugees. Where do those refugees go? Now, if they're Muslim refugees, why aren't they going to Saudi Arabia? Why aren't they going to Egypt? Look at the Palestinian, the Gaza situation.
They don't go to Egypt. Yeah.
Why are there no ones allowing any of those Gazans to come to Egypt, right next door, where they have the same language, the same culture, the same religion? Why aren't they going there? Why are they all coming to Europe, and why are they all coming to the United States?
Why?
Well, it's obvious, because we have something they want. What do they want? They want our freedoms. They want our economy. They want to be taken care of. Everybody wants to come to the West because we have much higher.
That's true, but again, Saudis do not want them there as
Okay,
well.
let me finish. Alan, you're interrupting me every time, but
Okay.
let me finish. Why is it they don't go to Japan? Why don't they go to Thailand? Why don't they go to Singapore, which have much higher economies and are much richer? Why don't they go to Taiwan? Why don't they go to any of the Asian countries that have a higher standard of living than we do? Those countries don't allow them.
Yes.
No one's complaining about that. No one's saying diddly swat about it. And we know. See, those countries cannot because they are already overpopulated.
European?
Our countries are not. We have a low birth rate, especially in Europe. Not so much in America, but especially in Europe. In America, it's a totally different reason. It's for political reasons. They want to get many more votes. That's why they want as many people to walk across the border. That's why we've had 11 million who've walked across the border in the last 3 years, because hopefully they'll all vote Democrat. Most of them will. So that's how you raise your numbers for voting. But in Europe, they don't have that problem. So why is Europe inviting all these? Well, one of the reasons is the fact that they have part of their constitutions and part of their rules is that they have to allow refugees to come in. And the vast majority of refugees are all Muslim. Whether you like it or not, they're almost all Muslim. In Britain, it's a particular different problem in that Britain has a Commonwealth. Therefore, they have to let Commonwealth people come in. And the majority of those who are coming in the Commonwealth are from Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. But it's not Hindus that are coming in. It's all Muslims, almost entirely Muslim. 70% of all those who have immigrated to Britain are from the Muslim. Now, here's the difficulty. Immigrants are, we need immigrants. My country here in the United States, we're all immigrants. So it's a country of immigrants. And we are absolutely dependent on immigrations to continue. And we have so much room here. We can accommodate tens of millions more. That's true. And we just go through America. It's just full of forests. And we have allowed 11 million to come up from the South. Those are the best kind of immigrants. Why? Number one, they're Catholics, so they're Christians. Number two, they have a strong view of family. Number three, they come and they learn the language almost immediately, and they are the best workers. They come to assimilate. They want to become Americans. Yes, Spanish-speaking Americans. In some ways, those are the best kind of immigrants to have. Muslims, however, whenever they immigrate to a country, they come with their language, with their dress code, with their food code, and they want to start Islamic courts, and they want to bring Islam with them. Because for them, every Muslim, you don't separate church and state. You bring the church and mosque. You bring the mosque and state together. And therefore, when you become a immigrant, you become a deist. A deist must mean to introduce Dar al-Islam to Dar al-Harb. Harb means house of war. So they're coming to the house of war to introduce Dar al-Islam. As a result, when they come, they do not assimilate. Rarely do you see them assimilate. And that's why, inevitably, the more they come, the more they set up their enclaves, the more they start the ghettos. The first thing they do is build mosques. Once they build a mosque, that becomes the center of trade. For them, that becomes the center of commerce and politics. And the first thing they do is they enter into politics. Look and see what just happened in July this year in Britain. In Britain, 11 cities elected Muslim mayors. 11 cities in Britain now have Muslim mayors, including London. Now, they already had a Muslim mayor there. Now, look at the victory videos of every one of, not all of them, but look and see what they said in their videos the day after the election. We are Muslim. Islam is here to stay.
Yes.
Their whole premise and their whole vocal is, we want to bring Islam to the different cities that they are now mayors of. That you would never see Catholics doing, or anybody other immigrants. Africans don't do that.
Yes.
Don't see that amongst any of your Latin Americans or South Americans. They're not coming to introduce a whole new religion and a whole new way of life. Only Islam does. And that's why I spent 25 years in Britain trying to wake the church up, trying to work the government.
Yes.
As much as I could, I gave up after 25 years. Now, remember, in Britain, which has the most benign and benevolent environment for any Muslim, we have no rules, no laws, any laws against Islam. We even have Islamic courts. It's the only Western country in the world that has Islamic courts. We have over almost 100 of them.
Islamic
Now,
court in
look at me,
Great
look,
Britain.
let me finish, Alan. Let me finish. You're jumping again. How many times have we been attacked by Muslims in Britain? Look at all the attacks we've had.
Yeah.
No other Western country has been attacked as much as we have. And yet we have been by far the most benevolent, most benign. We've had bombings. Look at the 52 that were killed in July 7th, 2005. Look at the car that went across Westminster, killing 5 people on the bridge, killing a policeman. Look at the bomb in Birmingham. Look how many people have been killed.
Yeah.
Look at the knifings that we had in the marketplace there in London. We've had so many attacks, and we're still getting attacks. And that's why, and when you stop and think of it, your question you're asking is absolutely important. You don't have to think politically to realize that if Islam, whenever it comes, the first thing they do is they take over the community, they buy up the buildings, they set up the mosques, and they take over politically. Once they take over politically, they never let go. And that's why they want to make Britain a Muslim country. This is helping, and not just there. Look, I just got back from El Salvador. I was there, where the president of El Salvador, Bukele, is a Muslim from Palestine. He is the president of El Salvador. And look and see what he has just done in the last few months. He is now allowing, well, first of all, notice what he did when he first came to power. He went and arrested 20,000 of the MS-13 gangs, which is the most notorious gang in El Salvador. Put them in prison, and where do you think he shipped them to? He shipped them all up to the United States. They're all here. They've just walked across the border. 20,000 of them. And we don't even know. We're still fighting. We're finding them everywhere. They're in Long Island. They're in New York City. They're up in Chicago. They're the ones that are. Look and just see what happened in Colorado last week. Those were Venezuelan criminals. Every one of them were Venezuelan criminals because the Venezuelans are emptying all their prisons and sending them up to America. Now, here's the thing. What did he do just about 2 months ago? A little more than that, April. So in April, Bukele then permitted 5,000 businessmen to come and set up shop in El Salvador. They were giving free citizenship and they were given no taxation. But the only criteria that he was demanding is that they had to be Muslims. He's been right up and open about it. He knows exactly what he's doing. He wants to make El Salvador the first Muslim country. I was asked to go down there and talk to all the pastors. The pastors were in panic. I spent 2 days down there, and the room was filled with people, pastors from every denomination. They all came together. Why? Because they realize that many pastors are now converting to Islam. They're in El Salvador because they're getting free handouts, and they're using it for political gain. So it's happening in El Salvador. It's happening in Britain. It's not happening so far here, but it's happening in certain cities here in the United States. And that's why I sit there and I shake my head and say, why is not the political structure, why aren't the politicians waking up? And certainly, why isn't the church waking up? So that's about as political as I can get it. But almost in every case, it's from personal experience.
So that president himself, is he Latin American or he's an Arab or?
His father is from Palestine.
Okay.
He was born and grew up, so he speaks fluent Spanish, but he also speaks Arabic.
Right.
His brother, Emerson Bukele, is responsible for all the mosques in El Salvador. There go the balloons again. Sorry about that.
No problem.
And so his brother, Emerson, I was supposed to do a debate with about 2.5 years ago. We were all set up to do a debate on television. I came to the studios to debate him about Islam. Is it relevant for the 20th century? When he saw who I was, he sent 2 pastors who had converted to Islam to debate me instead. And they brought the Quran with them. And they said, Islam is a religion of peace. Why are you afraid, Smith?
Sure.
And I said, okay, I want you to just open up chapter 9, verse 5. I want you to open to chapter 8, verse 39. They have never read the Quran, even in Spanish. They had no idea. All they had read is the first chapter. I said, okay, if you want to write the first chapter, why don't you read verse 7? And who are those who call God anger? And who are those who are led astray? That's the Jews and the Christians. That is a curse against us. It's sitting there repeating that 5 times a day. And you were a Christian at one time. It's cursing you, and certainly it's cursing your churches, which have now become mosques.
Right.
So it's happening as we speak, and not enough of us are shutting it down and confronting it publicly.
Is it on YouTube, the debate?
No. They didn't put it up on
It's
YouTube.
not recorded?
It's not recorded. It was just on television there.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot you since you mentioned Saudi Arabia. MBS, is there any updates on this line? Or
Listen, that will take me
Neil.
another hour.
Oh, really? Okay. So
I have a friend who's
okay,
coming.
yeah. So that's
he's
why
upstairs.
somebody sent me a question about Uthmanic Quran, but you already answered that. Yeah, there is no Uthmanic Quran. Yeah,
None whatsoever.
none.
I'm waiting for them to come up. I mean, stop and think. If Uthman had the Quran created in the Qurayshi dialect by Zayd ibn Thabit, and then he sent 5 copies. One he left in Medina, one he sent down to Mecca, one he sent up to Basra, one he sent up to Kufa, and the other one he sent up to Damascus. That means 5 manuscripts that were sent in 652 to 5 cities, so that this problem that they found, that Udaifa found way up in Azerbaijan, again, Azerbaijan, as you're saying, didn't exist, but nonetheless, to shut that down so that would never happen again. Show me one of those, just one of them. Van Putten, show me the one Quran that you're talking about, the archetype. You could talk about. We're only talking about 1,400 years ago. That's very recent. Listen, we have the Sinaiticus, the Alexandrinus, the Vaticanus, 3 metropolitan codices, 2 of them in the British Library, 1 in the Vatican in Rome, that are 200 to 300 years old, and those are complete manuscripts. If we can come up with 3 metropolitan codices written by the 3rd and 4th century, why can't you come up with one of the 5? Because those 5 cities have remained under Muslim control for the last 1,400 years. There has been no flood, there has been no fire, there has been no destruction. We don't know of anybody destroying those manuscripts, so where are they? Bingo. This is nothing more than fiction.
True. Okay, and I love when you finish your lectures with a prayer. So let's do that again. Can you say something for us at the end?
Lord, we want to thank you for this discussion that we've had. This has been good. We're hitting lots of, in some ways, germinal areas. These are areas that the world needs to know. This is much more damaging to Islam because we're pretty much showing that there was no Islam in the 7th century. There was no Muhammad in the 7th century. We can't even find a place called Mecca in the 7th century or a Quran in the 7th century. If you don't have Muhammad, if you don't have the Quran, if you don't have Mecca, if you don't have Islam, if we don't even have that word existed that early, or the people called Muslims that early, you don't have Islam at all. So you can see why this not only is damaging, but the world needs to hear this. And we thank you, Lord, that every one of these questions have been asked of you, has been asked about your scriptures, the documentary hypothesis, the form criticism, source criticism, textual criticism that started raising its head in the 1800s. And so, Lord, you have passed every one of these tests. That's why we understand this material better than anybody else. That's why, since we have passed the test with you and your scriptures and your revelation, we have all the right to ask the same questions of Islam and its revelation and its prophet. Lord, we thank you that we have that. But here's the great thing, and I'm going to end with this. Lord, isn't it fascinating that you came down yourself and you actually spoke the words that were written down by those who knew you? They were people who were eyewitnesses, John and Matthew, who were right with you in the last 3 years, writing down what you said and what you did. That's the beauty of what you have, which means if Islam doesn't have a book, they don't have a man, and they don't have a place, I want them to therefore come home, because they still need a book, they still need a man, and they still need another place. And who do you think has the only book, the only man, and the only place that is legitimate that they can come home to? Because they do love God. They do love you. They just don't know who you are. They do love revelation. They just don't have your revelation. And they do want to follow a model just like Muhammad, but they want a better model, and you're the only one that gives us the best model. So, Lord, help us to bring them home. We have the only alternative. We have the only antidote. We have the only answer, and that answer is you. Thank
Amen.
God. Thank
Amen.
God for what you've done. Thank God for what you're continuing to do, and help us to get bold. Help us to get off our chairs, get out of our offices. Help us to get this out into the public sphere, and help us to get it all through Russia. Because Russia is an amazing country, a great country, which has many Muslims on their borders and many Muslims in their country. Lord, help us to help them. So everything we say and do, Lord, may we represent you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, and thank you all who was listening to us.